You want me to put that on my Tudor?
Harry's Wife, Hell for Harry, Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Combining my expertise in explaining narcissism for you and utilising a report about the case of Catherine and Alan Kasanoff, I'm utilising that as a platform to explain to you what Harry may well be enduring at the current time, but also pointing you in the direction of what awaits him. By utilising another real-life example of the narcissistic dynamic, my intention is to drive home to you the seriousness of what it is that Harry is dealing with, and also to enable you to understand more about the personalities involved. I'd explained in part 1 how the narcissist, Alan Kasanoff, had manipulated a situation to portray his ex-wife as the parental alienator, resulting in her losing contact with her children as custody was placed with their father, Alan Kasanoff, the narcissist. I've explained that Harry's wife is likely to behave in a similar way, that she's likely to suggest that Harry has attempted to alienate her from the children, when in actual fact portraying him as the problem and suggesting that he is the abusive one. In July 2020, in the Kasanoff case, Alan Kasanoff got Judge Nancy Kober to sign an ex parte temporary order of protection for the children against their mother. Similarly, I would not put it past Harry's wife to engage in a similar way. It's likely that there will be instances where Harry, with his ginger temper and strong narcissistic traits, will have become angry at the way that he's been treated. We have instances of the two arguing in the past. It's likely that Harry's wife, through her manipulative behaviours, will frustrate Harry so that he will lose it, and that will be used against him as the narcissist drags up the past. Harry's wife will portray being a meek and mild mother who was just there trying to protect her family, whilst Harry is portrayed as the aggressive former soldier. He, of course, is much taller than her, and, of course, will be then demonstrated by her as being far stronger, manipulative, abusive, and therefore that she needed the protection of the court, but also her children. Such an order, if granted, would devastate Harry, but it is not uncommon for narcissists to pull this stroke in order to assert control over the real victim, and also for the purpose of facade management to show to the outside world, look, I'm the one that's being abused, because remember, in Harry's wife's mind, she truly believes that she is the victim. Her narcissism tells her that people are not to be trusted, that Harry is not to be trusted, that he is the aggressor, that when he shouted at her, he started it, rather than the fact that he was responding to the way that she behaved. Alan Kasanoff will have approached it in a similar way also. Notwithstanding the granting of this temporary order of protection, Catherine Kasanoff fought against it and got it vacated. She was then permitted to see her children with a paid supervisor at a cost of thousands of dollars per month. In January 2021, the oldest daughter ran away to live with Catherine. She was forced to return to the abusive father. There's a possibility that Harry has a good relationship with his children. He certainly talks about them in glowing terms, and what little footage and photographs have been allowed out by the Sussex household have shown him to be an engaging father. It's likely that he has a good relationship with them, and it may well be the case, dependent upon the age of the children, that they similarly react, that they see their mother as the problem. Naturally, Harry's wife, particularly when they're young, will seek to brainwash them to suggest that Harry is the problem so that they want to stay with her. Returning to the Kasanoff case, attorney Most selected Susan Adler and Carolyn McGofford, both Sidees, as the children's new therapists, costing $600 and $450 per hour, respectively. Note, these therapists let Alan sit in on the sessions. This, of course, was necessary for him so that he could assert control over the therapists and to ensure that the children continued to be manipulated and painted a particular picture. Such is his all-encompassing need for control, he could not remain outside of the sessions, and for whatever reason, the therapists allowed him to be included. Harry's wife would behave in a similar way. She may well suggest that children need therapy as a consequence of the way that Harry has treated them, and therefore she would also want to be involved in those sessions for similar reasons to Alan Kasanoff, to maintain that she cares about them, so she wants to see how they're getting on, but it's really masking that subconscious need for control over the therapists and over the children. Furthermore, note the eye-watering sums that are being charged for a service that probably didn't actually do anybody any use whatsoever. In September 2021, in the Kasanoff case, Dr. Adler decided that one of the girls, Charlotte, should never have contact with her mother. Dr. McGofford suggested that Ali, one of the other children, go to a therapeutic boarding school after she fled her father's home a second time to live with her mother. Note that these decision-makers are failing to understand why the child is leaving, and instead attribute it to something else. Indeed, Dr. Adler described Ali as a truant, not a victim of domestic abuse. Dr. McGofford told Ali she had to pick between Catherine, the mother, and herself as to whom to follow. Doctors Adler and McGofford made nearly $100,000 from the children's therapy. Their mother, Catherine, sued Dr. Adler in Westchester County on the grounds of fraudulent inducement. Now, leaving aside the behaviour of therapists, which is something that I'll be addressing in future videos, the narcissist will attempt to harness the therapist essentially as a member of the coterie, to look upon the narcissist favourably as the parent that is trying to save the children against the parental alienator. The therapist becomes drawn into the machinations of the narcissist without necessarily understanding that that is what is happening. They find themselves exposed to those machinations in such that they end up becoming an extension of the narcissist themselves. Being well remunerated, possibly being paid by the father, they essentially become a hired gun, with the repercussions that have been described. Harry's wife has access to a large amount of money, and it's highly likely, as a proponent of therapy and all the joys that it brings, Harry's wife is likely to behave in a similar way, insisting that the children have therapy to deal with their father's behaviour, insisting that the children have therapy to help them overcome, and therefore expecting to have compliant and supine therapists that will support her position against Harry, thus making it easier for her to control the children and exclude him. In August of 24th, 2021, through Catherine's efforts, the panel of forensic custody evaluators actually removed Dr. Abrams for gross misconduct. Dr. Abrams allegedly asked Catherine inappropriate sexual questions, as he reportedly did with other women during custody interviews. If this is correct, that starts to tell you something about Dr. Abrams and his behaviour. For example, he asked Cecilia Thomas to lie on top of him during an evaluation, she claimed. Naturally, that is not behaviour that would be required in any kind of consultation. Dr. Abrams was removed from the Kasanoff case. Judge LaBelle appointed forensic evaluator Kathleen McKay to make an updated report. Catherine then began to get back on her feet and rented a 3-bedroom apartment near the children in Larchmont. Alan went to get another ex parte TOP against Catherine. This is because her living near to the children threatened his sense of control, and therefore he needed to respond in that manner. Harry's wife is likely to want to exclude Harry from the home, but moreover, ensure that he is some distance from the children, to ensure that she is the one that can assert control, both over him by keeping him at a distance, but also over the children by keeping them either wholly or in part from their father. Returning to the Kasanoff case, without a hearing, a judge signed a 1-mile stay-away order requiring Catherine to vacate her apartment because it was within a mile of the children. She then had to live in basements and couches of friends, and she wasn't allowed to return to her apartment, even to get her belongings. September the 15th, 2021. Owing to work obligations, Catherine asked to appear remotely in Judge LaBelle's courtroom or rescheduled the appearance. Judge LaBelle threatened her with incarceration and an arrest warrant, and to file an attorney's grievance if she didn't appear. Catherine didn't understand why. Judge LaBelle routinely allowed Alan Kasanoff to reschedule, absent himself from status conferences, and appear remotely. Later, she understood why the excellent judge was angry. Catherine had gotten Dr. Abrams kicked off the custody evaluator panel. Judge Lovell was Dr. Abrams' good friend. The judge even officiated Abrams' wedding at his house. This, of course, shows that the judge thought highly of Abrams and, of course, was responding by punishing Catherine as a consequence of her correct removal of Abrams from the Kasanoff case. The fact is that Abrams' own behaviour was not impartial and, as mentioned earlier on, he was engaged, apparently, in asking inappropriate sexual questions. In November 2021, Catherine Kasanoff accused Judge Lebel of bias. As a result, he recused himself from the case, citing strong support for his recusal in the record. The custody evaluator, McKay, then met with Alan Kasanoff 17 times and 9 times with Catherine Kasanoff. She never observed Catherine interact with 2 of the 3 children. She never interviewed the children alone, permitting Alan to sit in the next room. Again, by doing that, she's fallen prey to the manipulative behaviours of Alan Kasanoff as he seeks to continue to assert control over the custody evaluator and over his children. During this time, Catherine visited her children with a supervisor present to listen and watch them. She barely saw them from week to week and was not alone. The custody supervisor gave good reports about Catherine's conduct with the children. But Dr. McKay stopped meeting with Catherine while meeting with Alan. She also met with Dr. Adler for her professional opinion after Catherine sued her, demonstrating again a less than impartial way of approaching matters. One can envisage that Harry's wife would engage in similar chicanery, seeking to press home an advantage by portraying herself as the victim of a domestic abuser. Her narcissism is likely to lead her to try every form of manipulation that she can to ensure that custody evaluators and therapists are hoodwinked, that they see her as the kind individual who is just now a single-parent mother that is doing her best to look after the 2 children. She will rope in Doria in such actions, with the lieutenant supporting her in terms of the allegations being made against Harry. Part of the reason why Harry's wife had Doria at the house was to ensure that she had a lieutenant who would support her with regard to the way that she would control Harry and the children. Of course, remember, Harry's wife doesn't consciously think in such terms. Her narcissism drives her to behave that way, by ensuring that somebody who is now painted white and is seen as on her side is involved in ensuring that she does what Harry's wife does, and basically gets Harry in a pincer movement. Doria on one side, Harry's wife on the other. This also then has the collateral consequence at a later date that Doria can be called upon to give evidence supporting Harry's wife's position. She was in the house a lot. She was there to help with the children. She saw what went on. But who has Harry got? Nobody. As is often the case, the narcissist ensures that the primary victim is alienated from support networks in the same way that Alan Kasanoff has done with Catherine Kasanoff. Harry has no friends. He has no family. He hasn't met the Markle side of the family. His side of the family is an ocean away. All of this means that notwithstanding the manipulations that he's being subjected to, it makes it more difficult for him to cope because he has no support network. But moreover, he also doesn't have anybody who can necessarily give evidence to contradict the lies that Harry's wife will undoubtedly tell about him. Her lies, supported by Doria, were likely then to be accepted by a court, while Harry can only say, but it didn't happen that way. He, with his own admissions through Spare of drug taking, killing 25 people in the Taliban, and with Harry's wife saying that she's just this meek and kind wife who put up with all of this behaviour for such a long time because she tried to support him, will undoubtedly, as governed by her narcissism, portray a picture of him as the aggressor, as him trying to alienate the children from her, and she will do so supported by evidence that has been accumulated showing Harry's poor behaviour, the drug taking, etc., losing his temper through frustration, but also with the testimony of Doria too. Harry has a very difficult situation awaiting him unless he starts to try and correct that behaviour now. It's highly unlikely that he will do so because he doesn't know what he's dealing with. and therefore he will remain in this trap that has been created. I'll now continue in part 3 with a further comparison of what is occurring in the Kasanoff case with what Harry can expect and what he may well be undertaking and experiencing now. Join me there to further your understanding about the way that a narcissist behaves, to further your understanding about the way that a narcissist behaves in the dynamic with their primary source, but also how it can pan out with regard to the breakup of that relationship and the aftermath involving the children.